And good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Ask the Theologian on this Wednesday. I'm Randy White, and glad that you are here as we're going to question the assumptions a little bit and take your biblical, theological, and worldview questions, try to give a rightly divided answer, and do it with a smile and a little sarcasm and some humor and a serious look at the Word of God. Hopefully, we go down to Ives, our friend in San Fernando, Pampanga, the Philippines. Had a question yesterday that I had to watch a little video to be able to answer. Please give your comment, your insight into this short YouTube video about a Methodist dad's speech regarding transgenderism. And I did go to that YouTube and YouTube video. And Nathan, my big red button's not working, but he'll get me there. And I'm not going to show you the video anyway, so I'll give you the commentary. The video is of an attorney who is speaking before the state legislature in Missouri, trying to get them to vote against proposed legislation. I didn't read on the legislation, but proposed legislation. It looks to me that this legislation was prohibiting biological males from participating in sports that are made for biological females. And this particular dad, here's a little picture, lifelong Missourian, a business lawyer, a Christian, a son of a Methodist minister. Might I say that though we do this all the time, that is what do you call that? It's a fallacy that your pedigree and your resume matters in a discussion like this. The discussion is not, does it matter that he's a Missourian? Would it have been wrong, if he was maybe from across the river in Kansas? No, it really doesn't matter. I suppose he's speaking to the Missouri State Legislature, and so perhaps that's the only difference. But honestly, if I was there testifying or Ives was there testifying, who cares? We want to know the content of the matter here. So really a discerning legislator, and I hope they all are, but I have my doubts. I've seen a lot of these people. A discerning legislator, your congressman, your state senator, state legislator, ought to say, I'm really interested in the matter at which we're voting on, and if you can give me insight into that, that's good. If you are from Mars, go for it. I'm a Missourian, I'm a business lawyer. Well, that's a mark against you, but I'm not going to count it against you because it doesn't really matter. Butcher, baker, candlestick maker, whatever it is you are. Or he says, I'm a Christian. I'm the son of a Methodist minister. Therefore, you should listen to what I have to say. I am a Christian. I am a son of a Methodist minister. You owe it to listen to me. Really, the only thing he needed to say is, I'm arguing against your legislation. Here's my reasoning. Okay, he gives a little testimony about his son who has become a girl. And, the testimony's interesting. He does as testimonies are designed to do. He pulls the heartstrings a little bit. He makes you feel sad a little bit for the circumstances and the situation at hand. And he says along the way, I wrote this statement down. I'll just put it on the screen for you. We cannot silence our child's spirit. He gives all this testimony about how he was trying to tell his little boy he couldn't wear dresses. And finally, he realized he was silencing his child's spirit. Legislators of Missouri, he says, you should allow boys to be in girls' sports because we cannot silence our child's spirit. The problem is, we all silence our child's spirit, and we have to. If we do not silence our child's spirit, our child grows up selfish, mean, mad, all of those kind of things, disobedient. If we do not silence our child's spirit, we end up with an utterly untenable and unruly society. As a matter of fact, it is the parent's job to silence the child's spirit. If they have a spirit of anger that should not be there, you silence that spirit. If you're sitting in the Methodist church listening to Grandpa preach and you have a spirit of yelling, silence the spirit. Now, for whatever reason, this boy had the spirit that says, I want to wear dresses. Help the boy. Help him understand how God has made him, how God has made him as a boy, and teach him and train him to be a boy. And guide him in that and try to figure out what is happening here that is causing this kind of issue. Counsel the boy, silence the child's spirit. Now, even if, for whatever reason, the parent is unable to silence the child's spirit, there are people in society, and to have a society that means anything at all, you have to have gender differences. And it's just a matter of science, honestly. There is a scientific, verifiable chromosomal difference between a boy and a girl. And to ignore those is not to follow the science. I would say, by the way, that if you hear someone say, follow the science, you're talking to someone who won't follow the science. You're talking to someone who says the XY chromosomes are not science, or the beating heart is not science. The person who says follow the science very rarely is following the science, because science is verifiable. I think that if you're a legislator in Missouri, you have to say, you have a very personal, heart-wrenching story, Mr. Christian business lawyer, Missourian son of a Methodist preacher guy with a red tie. What a very nice story. It means absolutely nothing. There's lots of people with very nice stories. There's stories of girls who have a desire to excel in sports. And maybe there's a boy in their locker room, and there's a boy who's taking their place in the WNBA because the boy's better than the girl in all of that. He's a very nice story too. We don't really care about very nice stories. We care about who can be in girls' sports. So I appreciate your very nice story. But we're talking about who can be in girls' sports, and the only thing we can really go on is not very nice stories. If we're going to have a very nice state at all, we're going to have to follow the science. That's my opinion on the Christian Missourian business lawyer, son of a preacher. There it is. If you want to look it up, Missouri dad testifies against trans youth athlete ban. It looks like the ACLU put it up. Maybe I'll add my comments there. I don't typically comment much on YouTube, but who knows? Maybe I'll put it on there. Thanks, Ives. I appreciate that. Again, sorry that question got delayed from yesterday. And here's another one delayed from yesterday. I believe it came in yesterday anyway. And it's from our friend Russell over in Kent, home of E.W. Bollinger and Russell. 2 Kings chapter 2, verses 23 and 24. This is that story. Bring it up size for you here a little bit. This is that story in which you've got, 2 Kings chapter 2, verses 23 and 24. He went up thence from Bethel, and as he was going up by the way, there came forth little children out of the city and mocked him and said unto him, Go up thou bald head! Go up thou bald head! Go up, bald head! That's what they said. I'm just quoting. And he turned back and looked at them and cursed them in the name of the Lord. And there came forth 2 she-bears out of the wood and tare 42 children of them. Oh, one of my favorite stories. Russell has a good question. Is there any justification other than calling Elisha bald that he set these 2 bears on the 42 children? It does seem a bit drastic, doesn't it? That, Elisha, really by now, Elisha ought to be used to all the bald jokes. I don't know how old Elisha was, but I doubt he just became bald. And, is a prophet of God really going to be that fragile in his psyche that a little bit of, bald head kind of jokery is going to be a problem to him? I don't think so. I mean, I have walked in his shoes, and I've never really had any children coming out, go up, thou bald head, go up, thou bald head. That's what people say to me when it's time to preach, all the congregation. Go up, thou bald head. Go up to the pulpit, thou bald head. They're ready to hear a word from God. Now, I doubt that it is, that it's just the only justification, as the question says here. I doubt that the only justification is that he's being called bald. If so, wouldn't you agree with me that we could probably call Elisha's character into question? Honestly, if that's the only reason, I want to say to Elijah, get over it, Elisha. Get over it. There's more to it. So, what is the more to it? That's the question. Now, let me say that this is on my list of sermons on 30 minor biblical stories, and so we'll probably get to this and dig into it, I think, a little with a little more strength. But I think that we've got a couple of issues here. One is, this is the same chapter in which Elijah is taken wherever Elijah is taken in the chariot. And now Elisha is the one taking his place. Probably in these key words right here, go up. Not so much bald head, but the emphasis being on go up. Typically, in the Hebrew scriptures and the New Testament scriptures, to go up is to ascend unto God. Now, maybe we can tie this literally to Elijah going up, and they're saying, hey, why don't you just go with him? But probably more so, we could apply it to his service as a prophet. And that basically, he has just received the mantle of a prophet, and it was a physical mantle, so they're seeing it, and they are actually mocking his position as a prophet more than anything. Now, prophets had signs or manifestations, much like apostles did in the New Testament. And so here, basically, I think we've got calling into question, is he really a prophet? And it wasn't a good thing to do, and it ends up they call it into a question, and 42 of them end up being torn up by a she-bear, by 2 she-bears. So I think the key is in go up. You may remember that in the New Testament especially, but you see it also in the Old Testament, that up is always towards Jerusalem. Up is to ascend unto God. I think probably it's calling into question his prophecy. Now, there is a possibility you even put these together. Go up, thou bald head. There were times when, even we saw this in Paul the Apostle, when there were Nazirite vows that had to do with the shaving of the head. Could it be that not only are they mocking his prophetic mantle, but they're also mocking what am I trying to say here? The religious vow that he had made. So maybe he's not naturally bald. He's shaving his head for a religious vow. So they say he's a prophet. He's got a religious vow. And these are just pagan children. I think the term there is probably pretty broad. I don't think we're talking about 5, 6, 7-year-olds. We're probably talking about, maybe 11, 12, 13-year-olds, maybe even 15, 16, 17, 18, 19-year-olds here. And I think what we've got is a mockery. Now, let's check one thing here as we're thinking about that. I do want to go to Chabad.org and let's look into, as I bring up the Tanakh here, let's look into, we're looking at 2 Kings, the 2nd chapter, and show Rashi's commentary, and let's go down to verse 23. So go up away, Baldi. How do you like that Jewish translation? Jewish translation into English. Go away, Baldi. Go away, Baldi. Little boys. Now, interesting. Rashi says he gives the Hebrew word here: people empty of any observance of the commandments. Now, that's both a textual and probably an interpretive argument there. Little boys, if indeed that is correct, that it's people empty. Let's pull up here and check this. Little children. Okay, the Hebrew word here does show it as, let's pull it up in the Strong's, a young man, a servant, a lad, a youth, boys. Okay, boy, that. I don't see the idea there of emptiness, but my guess is Rashi knows his Hebrew better than I do, so there's probably some means in which that particular Hebrew word can mean empty, and then the interpretation, he says they are empty of any observance of the commandments. So that hit my speculation there that this is actually a religious accusation that's going. Now, go away, Baldi. Go away from here, for you have made the place bald for us. For until now we would hire ourselves out to bring sweet water from a distance, and we would earn our livelihood thereby. And when the water became sweet, they lost their livelihood. Thus it is explained in Sotah 46b. Now, Sotah is some of the rabbinical writings. So I'd have to dig into that and see if there's more there. But, looking again at that Hebrew word, it is sometimes servant. So if you've got the immediate context, the waters were healed unto this day, according to the saying of Elisha, which he spake, and that's when he gets this. So tying it to in that context is probably not as odd as it seems like when we just read Rashi out of context here, and bringing that together. So Let's save that for the dig into list. But I think that what we've got here is that these are people who have rejected God and rejected his messiahship, not messiahship, excuse me, rejected Elijah's prophecyship, if you can, his role as the prophet. And they're upset with him, and they are, filthy groggins. Let's call them filthy groggins. They are just empty and devoid of any of their religion, which they should have. I think these are Jewish boys of whatever age, should have been honoring the Lord and honoring his prophets, but instead, go up, Baldi, go up, go up. That's their word. Thanks, Russell. I appreciate the question. Back to Anthony in Corpus Christi. This might have come in yesterday, too. Pardon me, Anthony. So Anthony had a question yesterday that said, hey, if hell, we went through some interpretation there, but if hell, though there are not warnings to the Gentile, we came up with one, though there are not necessarily a lot of direct warnings about hell, can't offering the kingdom in the same context also apply to Gentiles? So the question here is that if you can take warnings of hell and apply them to Gentiles, why can't you take blessings of kingdom and apply to Gentiles, if I'm interpreting this question carefully? I think the reason is because you can go through theologically in the scriptures and you can see that hell does, in the end, in Revelation chapter 20, it does belong to everyone who is not of Christ. And that would be certainly a lot of Gentiles as well as some Jews. And so we're biblically given permission to take hell and apply it. Now, kingdom and the offer of the kingdom, I think when you take the testimony of Scripture, there's not any offer of the kingdom that is for Gentiles as Gentiles, only when Gentiles convert to Jews. It is a specific promise that's given to Abraham. So if I say, hey, Anthony, to you and your descendants, I am going to give, I'm going to give Canada. I'll give them away. So to you and your descendants, I'll give Canada. And then let's say, 5, 10 generations down, you say, okay, you still haven't paid up. I say, I'm going to pay up. I'm giving it to Canada. I hereby declare Canada belongs to all the world. Then you say, wait. Are you some liar, pants on fire? How can you be giving it to everybody when you gave it to us? That is not a fulfillment of the prophet in any means. Of the contract, if you will, of the promise is what I meant to say. That is not a fulfillment of the promise in any means. So, can he take the promise to Abraham? Your descendants are going to receive, but I'm giving it to everybody. So you kind of got it. I think Abraham would contest that in a court of law, and I think Abraham would win and God would lose. So that's the reason we can't just say, well, since you can apply this, you can also apply that. I think this is one of those this is not that kind of issues that goes along. Now, thank you. I appreciate it. We got fresh questions. I think we're into the fresh questions today. Mr. Hayes, assuming Elijah was more spiritual because he had tons of hair. I'm just appalled that you would think so. But let's see. Terry, I'll get to your question in a moment down in the Philippines. But I see Terry's here from London. Glad you're here. Now, that's not London, Ohio, right? I presume you're London, England. We have Russell here from the southeast. Did I get it? I don't think I got it right. From the southeast. Russell from the southeast. And we have Ash from Buckinghamshire. And Terry from London. 3 is enough to start a good right dividing church. somewhere in the middle, which is probably going to be slightly south of London, I think, just looking on a map. But I haven't studied the map very long. Let's go down to the Philippines. The Gentile man named Cornelius, was he a grace believer or part of the little flock, even though he was a Gentile, for he heard Peter's gospel? I think when you look in, what is that, Acts chapter 8, am I correct there? When you look into chapter 8, excuse me, get everything set up here for you, there we go. Well, you've got the Samaritan or Philip going down to the Ethiopian eunuch. First of all, Acts 10, isn't it? Excuse me. And yeah, certain man in Caesarea called Cornelius, a centurion of the band called the Italian band. This is not like a musical band if you're trying to get a ticket or anything. Now, it says he was a devout man, one that feared God in all his house, and gave much alms to the people, that's the Jewish people, and prayed to God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I think verse 2 helps us a little bit. So the question is, this Gentile man, Cornelius, he was a Gentile man. Our question is, was he a grace believer or was he part of the little flock? Even though he was a Gentile, could he have been a part of the little flock? Now, he is, in verse 2, chapter 10, verse 2, he's not converted here. He's what is often called in the scripture a God-fearer. That is, he's a Gentile, but he's devout. Now, devout, the only way I know to take it, and you can follow this through in the book of Acts especially, devout is, he is seeking to fulfill the law, even as a Gentile, doing the best he can. One that feared God. Well, one that fears God is going to, seek to fulfill the law, along with all his house. Gave much alms to the people. Now, this isn't the Italian people he's giving alms to. This is the Jewish people. And he prayed to God. All that tells me is he is well on his way to converting. Now, if you follow the passage very closely, and it would take us more time than we've got here today, but if we follow the path very closely in chapter 10, you've got that, here's Peter, Simon the tanner. He gets this vision as it's happening. And Peter goes up on the housetop. He was hungry. He fell into a trance. He sees this great sheet knit at the four corners, let down. There's these four-footed beasts, wild beasts, creeping things, fowl of the air. Rise, Peter, kill and eat. Peter said, yes, certainly, you freed us from the law at the resurrection. Not so, he said, not so, Lord. I've never eaten anything that is common or unclean. Peter is devout according to the law, no doubt about it, and he is going to stay that way. He insists on staying that way, and then God gives him this word here. Peter doubted. This is a difficult thing for Peter to go into a Gentile's home, which is by rabbinical teaching not kosher, to go into a Gentile's home. It's one of those better safe than sorry kind of thing, that the law did not prohibit it, but the rabbis did. I believe I'm correct in saying that. And so he goes through. Now, as you see, he ends up down in Caesarea, and you've got, again, Cornelius, a just man, one that feareth God, a good rapport among all the nation of the Jews, just like verse 2. And so he's going to go, Peter coming in, Cornelius worship him. Peter said, no, I'm just a man, stand up. And you go through the entire story. Now, if we were to look through this story, what you would see is Peter never shares the gospel of grace. I think it's because the gospel of grace has not even been shared with Peter. I would argue that perhaps has not even been shared at all. That the first time we're going to know for sure it's shared is chapter 13. Did Paul know it at this point and the word just hadn't traveled? You could argue it that way, but you could argue the other way as well. Whatever it is, Peter doesn't know about it. And all Peter knows is he is going to invite Cornelius into the Jewish family to be a recipient of the kingdom. I think when you look at chapter 10 very meticulously, wearing your reading glasses so you don't miss a thing, you see, he's inviting Cornelius into the little flock. So I think what we've got is Cornelius was already almost converted, proselytized into Judaism, and that this is what you have, and he's a convert not only into Judaism, but into Judaism that is the way. That is the way of the little flock, the way of Peter. I would put him in Peter's little flock there. Now, a second question from Ives. I'm having a second thought, questioning the assumptions, good for you, about the eternality of the lake of fire or of hell. Why call it the second death? Even those who are cast there will be immortal. Could it be that human souls will be annihilated, but Satan and the rest of the fallen angels are ones who will be severely punished forever? Well, in total logic, yes, it could be. Could you look at it and say, okay, when we get to that passage in Revelation chapter 20, it tells us that Satan is the one that is going to be in torment forever and ever. I believe that if you go, let's say, to Revelation 19, and you look at let's say the Antichrist, verse 20, 19 verse 20. The beast, that's the Antichrist, was taken, and with him the false prophet that wrought miracles before him, with which he deceived them that received the mark of the beast, and them that worshipped his image. So you've got the Antichrist and all of his followers right there in verse 20. These both were cast alive into the lake of fire with brimstone. Now, what happened to him here, again, we don't have. So you could speculate they're just burned up and they exist no more. The remnant were slain with the sword of him that sat upon the horse. Okay. And then later, when you have at the great white throne judgment, beginning in verse 10, the devil that deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and a brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are. Now, this is 1,000 years later, and shall be tormented. This, I think this actually answers it more than I suspected it did. So the devil here is singular. If you notice right at the bottom of the screen, diablos there, it is singular. The devil that deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are, and shall be tormented. This phrase right here, I think, is the one that helps answer it. Shall be tormented day and night forever. Now, if you notice at the bottom of your screen there, it is the third person plural. So it's not that the devil shall be tormented day and night forever, but the beast, the false prophet, and the devil, in its most immediate sense, shall be tormented day and night forever. Now, the beast is the Antichrist, and I am just about to put forth a book on the Antichrist being alive and well. But what I say, I hate to give away the secrets here, but what I say in this little booklet is that the Antichrist spirit is alive and well today, but is alive and not well is actually what I say. But his body may or may not be alive. The spirit of the Antichrist is going to inhabit the body. Now, the point is, this body goes into the lake of fire. And the false prophet, presumably, again, a body. Now, you've got at least, you would have to argue that Satan and the fallen angels are severely punished. I think that the common sense reading of the word would be that, wait a minute, we've got the other people that are in the lake of fire too. Wouldn't we presume the same thing that happened? If something different happened, then we would kind of expect the word of God to tell us that, because it tells us what happens to the beast, the false prophet, and the dragon, the devil. They are tormented forever and ever in the lake of fire. It also tells us that those who get the mark of the beast are in the lake of fire. Can we presume that those who get in the mark of the beast and are in the lake of fire, they actually go on to go get degrees from Harvard University? We could make that up, but it would be totally upon our own that we would have to make it up. Again, the average common reading, if the plain sense makes common sense seek no other sense, would be that, hey, if they went into the lake of fire together and 1,000 years later the beast and the false prophet are there, those who are specifically said to have gone in with them would be at the same point. So I think what we've got here is to propose to the jury that those who receive the mark of the beast are annihilated, even though the beast himself is not annihilated. That's going to be a hard sell. I don't think you're going to be able to convince the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, especially if you have to have the text itself. Now, can it fit in the text? You can make the argument. It's just not a natural reading. It's no more natural than saying that those with the mark of the beast are actually going to go on to get degrees from Harvard. Neither one of those are natural, annihilation or Harvard degrees. I'm not sure which is better or worse, but that there's just nothing in the text to build that or support that, as I see it. Now, if you see something more, of course, I would love to see that. Paul, our friend up in King, Wisconsin, World Video Bible School. Have you heard of World Video Bible School? I have not, but I'm about to. World Video Bible School. Here we go. And this is, looks like a Bible teacher that's got videos. Let's see, categories, audience, video type, languages, options. Trying to see if I could find something about their doctrinal statement here. About. Let's try about. Let's see. About has served Christians since 1986, making teaching materials for churches' use worldwide, serving God and His people by doing His will to the best of our ability, committed to producing and distributing excellent quality videos. So I don't see anything just immediately that gives me a whole lot of fears, but let's see. So they're making videos, it looks like, available to the church. Seems like a good thing. Let's see here. It is not a church. It exists to serve the church. It stands on its own, independent of any congregation of the Lord's church. We believe we may biblically operate as a nonprofit corporation, providing Bible study materials to individuals and churches interested in using them. They're basing, do we as a non-church? The fact that they're saying that we're not a church, but we think we can do this, tells me they probably have a pretty conservative doctrinal standard, because those with kind of a universal church concept would never even think that that would be an issue. So this tells me they have a local church emphasis and context, which I like. I agree with that. So let's see here. Not under the oversight. It has a 7-man board of directors. The board of trustees is made up of elders. We want to assure everyone our goal is the same. Okay. And it gives some legal matters. So the only thing I don't see, and it may be there, is a doctrinal statement. I'd have to obviously look through again and see some of the videos. Let's just see some of the ones that are here. Bible Land's passages. Is the Bible contradictory? That would be kind of interesting to take a look at and see. Let me, back up there. Do they take a dispensational approach to the contradictions in the Bible, or are they dismissive of those? Wonders of Creation, probably a creationist kind of thing. Children's video Bible stories might be interesting. The crux of the matter. And some Christian evidences, women's studies. Okay, I would say, let's see if this is... did God tempt Abraham? Did Jesus rise? Did Moses write? I was trying to see if I could... come up. Obviously, we're not going to watch the videos here. See if I could see anything on the approach that they have taken through all of that. How to read the Bible. Yeah, I mean, it looks like they're teaching a literal aspect of reading the Bible, the story, a continuous thread. That could be covenant or it could be dispensational. Kind of hard to tell right there. Reading poetic literature and the Psalms, apocalyptic literature. I have not heard of it. That's Paul brings it up in King, Wisconsin for the first time, but looks like it might be worthy of looking into. Thanks, Paul, for bringing that up. Let's go to Michael down in Rancho Cucamonga. I had several things going to my mind. Trying to get you in the right place. How can I mess that up? All aboard to Rancho Cucamonga in the 7 letters to the 7 churches. Can I stop you right there? That's almost always the way we say that, the 7 letters to the 7 churches. But let's go to Revelation chapter 2, where it begins, unto the angel of the church at Ephesus write. I know thy works. Thy is singular. Now, unto the angel. These are actually, and it's harder to say, but they're actually letters to the angels of the churches, not the churches themselves. They are letters to the messengers. I think the angels, and I argue this in some of our studies, that the angels are the pastors. So these, instead of 7 letters to 7 churches, I would say 7 letters to pastors of 7 assemblies. That's a mouthful, so I understand it when people say it, but because Michael is in Rancho Cucamonga, I want to just stop there and work on that just a little bit. So in the 7 letters to the 7 messengers of 7 churches, I would say assemblies. And Michael goes on to say, yet they are really for the Jews in the tribulation where the church will not be. Are these letters maybe misaddressed? Now, so I've already spoken to one, is that it's really a letter to the pastors. They pass on a word to their church, no doubt about it, but it's a letter. Every one of them is a letter to the pastors. I do agree that we the average student of the word in evangelicalism, fundamentalism, Protestantism, Catholicism, we all misaddress them. You're exactly right. Because we take these churches to be those in the body of Christ during the dispensation of the age of grace. In fact, even most dispensationalists will not put the rapture until Revelation chapter 4. I think there's a number of problems with that you end up having to grease up a lot of pigs to make the whole thing work and fit through the door there. But that is most often what is done. So if you pick up a dispensational commentary, maybe even, let's look and see what Schofield has to say. The Schofield Reference Bible, his notes upon here on the left, this call in Revelation chapter 4, verse 1, a door was opened in heaven saying, come up hither. He says this call seems clearly to indicate the fulfillment of 1 Thessalonians 4, 14 through 17. The word church does not again occur in Revelation till all is fulfilled. So this is the standard dispensational approach, and that is to put the rapture at chapter 1. I would question Dr. Schofield right there on clearly indicate. I think there's a lot of things that clearly indicate that the rapture has already taken place, or is not, that the church, as we know it, the church of the dispensation of the age of grace, is not there. Just read Revelation chapter 2 and 3 from a strictly grace perspective. And you see that in Revelation chapter 2 and 3, you've got them losing their salvation, their name being blotted out from the book of life. You've got the possibility that they're not going to be able to eat of the tree of life. You've got them having to overcome and persevere to the end. And here we are, complete in Christ. In our dispensation, we're complete in Christ by virtue of his grace received through faith, not of works. How do you put all that together? I think this is a problem going back well before Schofield, who says, hey, this is the rapture. Schofield was being a parrot. And that was a long time tradition then, and we've only parroted it now an extra 10 years from the time of Schofield. So, I totally agree with you that these letters are misaddressed if you're addressing them to the church at Rancho Cucamonga in 2021. It's not to that. These are Jewish assemblies after the tribulation, and should not be, I don't think at all, tried to apply it today. That's why if you read thorough commentaries on the book of Revelation, what you're going to find is they spend a huge amount of time on Revelation chapter 2 and 3. And the reason they do it is one of two. One is they're working so hard, and it takes 15 pages to try to explain why this stuff that shouldn't belong there actually is there. Because they've got the wrong perspective on it. They're on a wild goose chase. And wild goose chases tend to go on long. The other reason is maybe if it's a commentary that's kind of giving an analysis of other commentaries, then they're going all over the map. They're saying, well, this guy said this, and this guy said this, and the next one said this, and the next one said that, and another one says that, and here's these 15 different views. And they come up to the end of Revelation chapter 2 and 3 and say, I have no clue what this means or how this fit. And it's all because it is on a wild goose chase. When you understand the book of Revelation in totality is the day of the Lord, it is the future, it is after the rapture, then Revelation 2 and 3 become such a clear word for the Jews in the tribulation. And it fits absolutely hand in glove, works perfectly. So I would very much encourage people to take a new look at Revelation chapter 2 and 3 and say, hey, wait a minute, that's not the churches of today, just because the word church is used there. I have said before that church is one of these words that you better take in the manner of always stopping to say, this is somebody's interpretation. What is ecclesia? It's a gathering. They're all together for the same purpose. As I've said before, it can be the Pancake Club or the Pansy Club or whatever it is, the African Violet Society. In Greek, ecclesia is a perfectly good word for African Violet Society. So you say, hey, I'm going down to the ecclesia this afternoon. Okay. Then I think that ecclesia is a word that they would have used. So to assume that ecclesia is always church in the Pauline sense, I think is a very false assumption. Question the assumptions. So I think that, it's not that everybody takes that parroted view that Schofield has here, but it's enough that if you just randomly take the commentary off the shelf, that's probably what you're going to get to, or you randomly, listen to a sermon. It'd be interesting, if we talked about that, what was that website a moment ago? The WVBS, the World something Bible School. To find one on Revelation chapter 2 there and see what that position is. My hunch is, maybe I'm wrong, but my hunch is they probably take kind of a Schofield view there. There were some others like Bollinger. Bollinger takes a futurist point of view. And let me say, I am convinced that you have not fully grappled with Revelation until you fully grappled with what Bollinger has to say. Bollinger, we have him available at Dispensational Publishing's big old commentary on Revelation. And I hear, among my former preacher friends, they're still preachers, I hear them, especially on social media and stuff, talking about various views on the book of Revelation. And here they are, experts on the book of Revelation, and they haven't read Bollinger. And I always want to say, you haven't even come to the table yet. Because you're giving me, here's the preterist point of view, here's the historist or dynamic point of view, here's the futurist point of view, and yet you don't even know what Bollinger has to say about it. And Bollinger could, if we were talking fighting, Bollinger could fight you with both arms tied behind his back and still whoop you. You've at least got to deal with him. He was an intellectual giant when it came to this stuff. Know what he has to say. Again, if you can find a good reason to reject it, reject it. He's Bollinger, I reject some of what he says. But at least take a look at it. And he does a great job at taking that totally futurist view, post-rapture view of the book of Revelation. Of course, those commentaries are available at dispensationalpublishing.com. Mr. Hayes down in Florida. What's a good question that would totally get Randy White into huge trouble? We're skipping that question, Mr. Hayes. But I'm gonna answer the question by not answering the question. I can pretty well handle textual questions. Now, often I might say in the end, I don't know, or we ought to look into that further. That one's worthy of future study. I've said that a few times. And yet I think people are okay with that. And are willing to say, none of us know everything there is about the text. But we talked about this, I think, yesterday, when you read the Bible literally and you interpret it with a few parameters that you've already got set, you can kind of take a stab at what's going on there. For example, the Baldi question that we had earlier, by my knowledge that up tended to be Jerusalem, up tended to be ascend, up tended to be spiritual involvement, and that there were there were vows of being bald. Those two things right there gave me enough to say, I'm suspicious we've got some kind of an assault on God and an assault on prophecy here, an assault on Judaism, more than an assault on his bald head. Now, we looked at just a couple of things and kind of confirmed that suspicion. Didn't go far enough into it to absolutely nail down that suspicion. But you get a few parameters like that, you can answer a Bible question that you haven't studied, and you can do it decently if you're just a good student of the Word. And incidentally, let me say a preacher should be a good student of the Word, right? I have said shame on you a number of times to the preacher world that thinks that they are better preachers because they don't preach very often. This is a trend in evangelicalism and has been in Protestantism for a long time, that if, their reasoning, that what they say is, hey, there's no way I could preach a good sermon 3 times a week. Nobody can do that. So I can preach a great sermon if I preach one 20-minute sermon a week. The problem is, that's a false assumption. That's not what happens. If you preach 3 or 4 or 5 sermons in a week, you're going to slaughter a bunch of them when you're young. But we old people, we're good with that. We're gracious. We take you out to lunch and set you right, or out behind the woodshed, whichever it takes. And by 10 or 15 or 20 years, more than that for some of us, of teaching the Bible 2, 3, 4 times a week, you just gain a lot of Bible knowledge. So when you get old and bald, then you're able to handle those questions. So the question is, what good question would totally get Randy White into huge trouble? It's not usually a Bible-based question, though Bible-based questions get me in trouble with evangelicals. Bible-based questions get me in trouble with people who hold standard evangelical doctrine. But I'm in trouble with them all the time anyway, so, that's no big surprise. Societal questions get me probably kicked off Facebook, though I don't know why I got kicked off Facebook, because they are fascists. They don't have to tell. I'm kicked off of live broadcasting, by the way. I can do other things on there, but I can't live broadcast at the moment. But Nathan is working on some matters that I should be able to. For example, it's just checking there. It's working. He's testing right now. There I am. There's my wonderful article title. There, pictures on the beach, and see how it just pops up over at the side, and I can read all the articles there and go on. So he's working. It's coming soon. Everything's working good, I guess, today, right? So we're making a system whereby I and Mr. Hayes and anyone else can broadcast. So I'm glad about that. But anyway, societal issues, those will get me in huge trouble, or at least get me kicked off of the various platforms. But we're coming right along to fix that. So probably the questions that get me most trouble are when I have to name names. That gets me in trouble. And sometimes my attitude. And the problem, it's usually with newcomers, because I'm actually a very happy guy, but sometimes the way I word things is like, that tongue, you could trim the hedge with that thing. And so they take it personally. People, snowflakes, they have a hard time putting up with me for very long, especially online. And they don't see my charm and wit so much. So that sometimes gets me in trouble. Let's go to Luca. I've had 2 or 3 questions from Luca, and I don't remember. Luca, help me out. Where are you from? You've told me before, but I've forgotten. Is there any indication in the text that the creation tablets were handed down to Noah from Adam, to probably mean to Moses from Adam? Why is it that we always mix Moses and Noah up? You know, I mean, you can go to I could probably teach an entire sermon on Moses building the ark. And, you know, at the end they say, oh, I love that sermon. Amen, preacher. Something in our brains mixes up that. But anyway, Noah would be in this mix too. So any indication that the text and creation tablets were handed down to Noah from Adam. Now, actually, he's probably talking, because I read the rest of the question. He did mean Noah. Luca's not messed up. It's just me. So the creation tablets handed from Adam to Noah, and then on eventually down to Moses. Or could it be that they were given to Noah and handed down from there? Now, Smithville, Missouri. Thank you, Luca. I appreciate that. There is a little bit of argumentation on that. You know, yesterday I mentioned this book. Let me see if I can reach it over here. Yesterday I mentioned this book here, To This Very Day. We're going to get it on our website. It's not there. Fundamental Questions in Bible Study. It's written by an Orthodox Jew. And I really like the book. It gives a defense of the inerrancy of the Old Testament manuscripts. And he talks some in there about where did the manuscript come from originally. There are those that believe that Moses was just dictated all of it, beginning from Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. And then there are others who believe that creation tablets, God wrote the creation story and handed it to Adam. Adam, added his piece and handed it to, I probably wouldn't go direct to Noah. I probably would go a little bit farther than that. Or a little bit closer than that. I would say he handed it to his sons, and his sons handed it off to a number of places you go down there. But and maybe Noah is the next one. But I think you've got an interim between Adam and Noah. And I think that you have to. Yeah, Noah didn't know Adam, but Noah knew Methuselah, his grandfather, and Methuselah would have known Adam. So it would have been a little indirect handoff when you look at those genealogies that don't totally overlap. I think a pretty good argument can be made that there were these various tablets of Genesis that were handed down. I speak to this in our series on the Bible graphically presented, which I believe is available on our website. It was one of the earlier series in Branson at our Labor Day weekend. I've got the book, The Bible Graphically Presented, that kind of shows the graphics of it, but doesn't give the teaching. So you got to have the video to fill in some of the blanks on that part. I think the idea of, let's say, creation tablets that God wrote, and then maybe some other tablets that maybe even Adam wrote and passed down, and then Moses coming and compiling it together. I think there's a pretty good argument with that, and pretty good scholarly argument from a very conservative Orthodox point of view, even that has taken place. Now, when, where, why, how is a little bit more difficult. We can find all the evidences that they were tied together and that Moses is the one to do it. Can we figure out these creation tablets? Did it go God, Noah, eventually Moses? What was the transmission there? That's a little more difficult. But there is some pretty good stuff, I think, that guide us through. Now, I think the key, if you want to do some more study on this, and it's a little bit difficult, but if you go to the book of Genesis, and the first one you get, I believe, is chapter 2, verse 4, and you see, maybe it's 3 and 4, but anyway, the key that you want to look for is these are the generations of. It is believed that this is the last phrase of this tablet. And then this second, so here's the closing statement. These are the generations of the heavens and the earth when they were created. This in the day that the Lord God made the earth. Because we're going to have numerous tablets before we're done, it will end saying, hey, here's the ending statement. These are the generations. And then it'll go back to the very first statement, in which the Lord God made the earth and the heavens. Well, that ties us back to the very beginning. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now, let's see here. This next one then would begin, every plant of the earth was right here. Let's see if I've got this right here, and go to the next time we find the word generations, and that's going to be chapter 5, verse 1. This is the book of the generations of Adam. In the day that God created man, in the likeness of God made he him. Okay, now that goes back, we were at 2 verse 4, and the first thing you've got, oops, I switched to Revelation, pardon me. We were back in Genesis chapter 2, verse 4, and you've got God creating man. It ties this story together. Now, again, I'm going on memory on this theory here, but it's a theory that works pretty good, that you've got these various tablets that were tied together. There were keys to tell you which tablet comes next. Because it didn't have, page 1, page 2, page 3. So this tablet lines up right here. This is the next one, and goes on there. And I think it's a pretty decent theory, and explains some of the things. And in this book, by the way, there's a very good discussion on this. Explains some of the things that would be very hard for Moses to have written by putting this together. Some of the things even in the book of Genesis that would have been very hard for Moses to have written. And yet there are things in Genesis that would have been very hard for those of that day to have written, because it refers to later days. In fact, even in Genesis chapter 6, in those days and after that, there were Nephilim, giants. What's this after that? Who knows this? So it's an interesting view. It's not the view, and I don't take the view that God dictated to Moses and he was the secretary, but it ends up at the same place, that what we've got is the very word of God. So if someone out there just insists God dictates, I'm all for that more than, so let's say, this JEDP theory, the documentary hypothesis theory that Julius Wellhausen, the father of religious liberalism, introduced and really messed up. It was such a, can I say, dumb theory that almost nobody holds it today, even though it greatly affected so much of the theological world there. Hope I stabbed at that answer well there, and appreciate all of that. Tony in Nebraska. I enjoyed seeing your state here last weekend. This will be the last question of the day, even though I got more. Sorry about that. But I'll save your others for tomorrow. I gotta make my program longer or something. I don't know what to do about all this, but I'm afraid if I make it longer, nobody's gonna listen to that long. I mean, maybe if I had hair, but I don't have hair. So what am I gonna do? Tony's good question. Where does the term little flock turn into a technical term? That's a good question because, you've got it not as a technical term in Luke chapter 12. Let's see, verse 32. This is not a technical term. It's a term in passing. Fear not, little flock, it's your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Tonight I'm studying the Gospel of John, and he calls them little children. Well, little children never became a technical term. Jesus says, hey, little children, I want you a new commandment. I give you little children. We don't talk about, Peter's little children. So when did it come from let's say, a term of endearment that Jesus gives to a technical term? I tell you what, I am going to ask, Brian Ross is probably the one who knows that. If anybody knows that, he's probably the one that will know it. Because certainly it is a technical term now. It's a term that refers to the way, as the book of Acts puts it, the way. It's been argued that maybe it's not the term we should use, and I think it's a decent argument, even though you're using the term, anybody who uses the term is pretty much from a right dividing community. It's this little tattletale that they are from the right dividing community. And it's a term that fits what they mean because it's defined right here, the Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. So absolutely right. The problem with the term is nobody else uses it outside of that group. So if you're an insider and you hear little flock or Peter's little flock, you know exactly what he's talking about. If you're coming from the outside and hear Peter's little flock, it's like, whoa, what are you talking about? Maybe some sort of different term would be helpful, but the problem is there's not a good option there. If you call it the way, people of the way, well, outsiders from right dividing just assume that to be Christianity. Christianity in general. So they would not narrow that like we would want it to. What do you do? How do you bring that? You remember, I said the way, it reminded me, remember back in the 70s, this will show my age a little bit, the Bible, it was a copy of the Living Bible. Here, I brought up a picture that was called The Way, the Living Bible, illustrated. Remember people carrying that? If you don't remember that one, you did not grow up in evangelicalism in the 70s. The use of the way, that's way more broad than those who call it Peter's little flock would. So what's the option? I think the option is probably call it Peter's little flock and explain what you mean. Because if you call it the way, you have to explain what you mean. Whatever it is, you have to explain what you mean. And honestly, within a local assembly, you don't want to have to you don't want to have to explain what you mean every single time you use it. That would get very old, and there's not really any difference that any strength or blessing to that. Now, when did they start using that as a technical term? The reason I say Brian Ross is he does so much work on history. He has given us J.C. O'Hare and the history of the American Grace Movement. The American Grace Movement is the group that calls it the little flock. So let me see if I can ask of him. Sometimes he's on a program today, or at this time, but probably not now because he's back in the classroom past lunch hour. Mr. Hayes, thanks. I'm going to check this out. Speaks of Old Testament usage here. Let's look at Psalm 23, verse 1. Yes, not the direct use of the term little flock, but you've got a lot of imagery of the little flock. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. We are the sheep of his feeding, the sheep of his pasture, eating right out of his hands. I would say if it's talking about sheep, flock, sheep, flock, shepherd, it is talking about Israel. But once again, broader evangelicalism doesn't know that. they, they wouldn't have a problem with having, the Good Shepherd Lutheran Church or the Good Shepherd Baptist Church or whatever. A right divider would never call it, here's Good Shepherd Bible Church. Because they would say, wait, Good Shepherd, that's for the little flock. We're not the little flock. They would have a problem with that. And I think rightly so. So when did that become a term? Let me check into that. I'm going to find out. Good question. Stay tuned and I'll get back with you. But for now, time is up. And, we'd have to put another quarter in the machine. But I got to go study the book of John, because tonight at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, we'll be having the Gospel of John, and look forward to that. To all of you who had questions waiting, they are staying in the hopper. They will ferment overnight and be ready to go tomorrow. But I look forward to seeing you tonight in the Gospel of John, then tomorrow 10 a.m., of course, and our study of Ezekiel will be back on tomorrow night as well. For that, always a good time to see you. Hey, go get an African violet. You don't really need a reason to live. You need an African violet. Isn't that looking good? Look at that. Nice little African violet there. I bought it one day at Lowe's, I believe, in Pueblo, Colorado. They had them, $3.95. I thought I can get years of enjoyment for $3.95. Indeed, you got it as well. He shall feed his flock like a shepherd. He shall gather the lambs with his arms, shall carry them in his bosom, shall gently lead those that are his young. Thanks for that good allusion, reference, cross-reference to the little flock, Isaiah chapter 40, verse 11. Appreciate that, Dan. God bless you. Got a few sheep down there in Arizona, don't you? The Baba black sheep kind of way, not little flock kind of sheep, but lambs, the animals, livestock. That's what you got down there, right? Good to see you. I got to quit talking. I got to go. Nathan's going to cut me off, right? God bless y'all. We'll see you soon.